Imagine a force so vast, so powerful, it could swallow nations whole, its banners rippling across continents. Now imagine that same force, tens of thousands strong, simply vanishing into thin air, consumed not by an enemy army, but by the very earth beneath their feet. This isn't a myth from a forgotten age, but a chilling historical riddle that has baffled scholars for millennia. The lost army of Cambyses II, the Persian king who dared to challenge not just an empire, but the very gods of the desert. In 525 BC, Cambyses had already achieved what few could dream of. He'd conquered Egypt, adding its ancient riches and strategic position to the burgeoning Achaemenid Persian Empire. His victory was total, his authority seemingly absolute. But his ambition, like the desert itself, knew no bounds. He eyed the oracle of Ammonius at Siwa Oasis, a potent symbol of Egyptian resistance and spiritual power, and decided it too must fall, its influence eradicated. From the conquered city of Thebes, Cambyses dispatched a formidable contingent. Accounts suggest a staggering 50,000 elite soldiers, drawn from the finest units of the Persian army. Archers, spearmen, cavalry, all hardened veterans of countless campaigns. This was no mere raiding party. It was a substantial invasion force designed to project unstoppable power deep into the western desert. A journey of hundreds of miles across an unforgiving expanse. Their mission: destroy the oracle, crush any remaining defiance, and extend Persian power into the absolute heart of the Sahara. What they encountered, however, was a foe unlike any they had ever faced, a silent, patient adversary that fought with the very elements. The early stages of the march were likely arduous, but for such seasoned warriors, manageable. They carried provisions, water, and the iron will of the Persian Empire. But the desert has a way of stripping away such certainties, revealing the raw vulnerability beneath the veneer of power. The Western Desert, or the Libyan Desert as it's sometimes known, is a place of breathtaking, yet deceptive, beauty. Vast, undulating dunes stretch to the horizon, appearing endless, timeless. But beneath that serene facade lies a crucible of life and death, where every mirage is a cruel joke, and every distant landmark a potential trap. Day after day, the sun beat down, relentless, transforming the landscape into a shimmering, oven-like hellscape. The air itself seemed to suck moisture from their bodies. Water sources grew scarcer, the heat more oppressive, baking the very ground they marched upon. Every step was a battle against exhaustion, against the gnawing thirst that dries the throat, cracks the lips, and clouds the mind with hallucinations. The sand, once a mere inconvenience beneath their boots, became a living, breathing enemy, shifting, rising, and constantly obscuring their path. This wasn't just a military expedition. It was a slow, agonizing test of human endurance against the raw, unbridled power of nature. Consider the logistics: 50,000 men, plus their camp followers, pack animals, and supplies. Feeding and watering such a multitude in a fertile land is a challenge. Doing so in a barren desert is a monumental feat. They would have relied on prearranged caches, local guides, and the hope of finding natural oases. Each day that passed without a reliable water source would have chipped away at morale, transforming discipline into desperation. The sheer weight of their supplies, necessary for survival, paradoxically slowed their progress, making them more vulnerable. The primary account of this catastrophic expedition comes from the Greek historian Herodotus, writing in his seminal work, Histories, around 440 BC. He recounts how, After several days' march from Thebes, the army reached the Oasis of the Blessed, which modern scholars generally identify as the Kharga Oasis. This would have been a crucial waypoint, a brief respite before pushing further west into even more desolate territory. Herodotus describes the local inhabitants' warnings about the desert's treachery, warnings that Cambyses' generals, brimming with imperial arrogance, likely dismissed. They pressed on deeper into the vast, empty quarter. The landscape offered no shelter, no respite. The bleached bones of earlier travelers, perhaps unlucky merchants or smaller expeditions, might have served as grim warnings, but the Persian army, imbued with a belief in their divine favor, marched onward. They were walking into a trap, not of cunning design by a human foe, but of elemental force, a natural phenomenon that would prove more devastating than any army. Then it struck. Without warning, the sky, which had been a brilliant, merciless blue, turned to an ominous, churning ochre. A sandstorm, unlike anything they had ever witnessed, descended upon them with terrifying speed and fury. Herodotus vividly describes it. A great and unusual south wind arose, which buried them in the sand. This wasn't a mere gust of wind. It was a tempest of biblical proportions, a colossal wall of abrasive grit. Abrasive grit that scoured the very air they breathed, tearing at flesh and spirit. Imagine being caught in that storm. Visibility would have dropped to zero, plunged into an unnatural, choking twilight. The roaring wind filled ears, drowning out commands, the cries of men, the braying of animals. Sand-blasted skin, tore at clothing, choked lungs, and filled eyes, making sight impossible. Soldiers, once disciplined ranks, would have been thrown into utter disarray, disoriented, separated from their comrades, their officers, their very sense of direction. Panic would have been a silent, suffocating presence, as men realized the true nature of their predicament. The vastness of the desert, once merely a backdrop, became an active, hostile entity. The sand wasn't just blowing horizontally, it was building, piling up, engulfing everything in its path. Men and beasts alike would have struggled, fighting against an invisible, suffocating enemy. Weapons became useless. Shields offered no protection against the sheer volume of shifting earth. They weren't just lost. They were being buried alive, entombed, their last gasps filled with grit. Their final moments a desperate struggle against an overwhelming force. The wind howled their requiem, and the dunes became their unmarked graves, a monument of their own ambition. While Herodotus provides the most detailed ancient account, it's crucial to acknowledge what we genuinely do not know and what remains disputed. Modern historians, like Alan B. Lloyd in his 1994 academic work, The Persian Army in Egypt, point out that Herodotus's sources for this story were often Egyptian priests. These priests might have exaggerated or embellished tales of Persian defeat for political or religious reasons, aiming to glorify their own gods and demonize their conquerors. There is, to this day, no definitive archaeological proof of the army's exact location or demise, despite numerous expeditions. The specific route they took, the precise timing and severity of the sandstorm, and the exact number of casualties remain hotly debated among scholars, making it one of history's most tantalizing cold cases. One common misconception about this event is that King Cambyses himself led this ill-fated expedition into the Siwa Oasis. That's incorrect. Cambyses remained in Memphis. He sent a separate force, under the command of one of his generals, to attack the Oracle of Ammonius. Cambyses himself led another expedition south in Nubia, which also ended in hardship. For centuries, archaeologists, adventurers, and treasure hunters have dreamed of finding the lost army. In the early 2000s, Italian archaeologists Alfredo and Angelo Castiglioni claimed to have found evidence near the Siwa oasis. Their findings, publicized in popular media outlets like Discovery Channel magazine, generated immense excitement. However, these claims have not been independently verified or accepted by the wider academic community. More recent, rigorous archaeological surveys, such as those detailed by Olaf E. Kaper in his 2009 research on archaeological explorations in the western desert of Egypt, have yet to yield definitive, widely accepted evidence. 50,000 men. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the size of a modern army division. Imagine the logistical nightmare, the sheer human suffering, the immediate and profound impact on the Persian Empire. Cambyses himself, after his own disastrous Nubian campaign, returned to Egypt a changed man, reportedly suffering from paranoia and making increasingly erratic decisions. The devastating loss of his Siwa expedition, whether through divine intervention or natural catastrophe, must have weighed heavily on him, shattering his aura of invincibility. The desert, indifferent to human ambition, had claimed its prize. It didn't need swords or spears. It wielded heat, thirst, and the raw, untamed power of the wind. It was a silent, patient killer, far more formidable than any pharaoh or general, proving that even the mightiest empires are but fleeting shadows against the backdrop of nature's eternal forces. The story of Cambyses' lost army continues to fascinate, a stark reminder of humanity's profound vulnerability in the face of nature's might. It's a tale whispered across millennia, a puzzle buried beneath shifting sands, waiting to be fully unearthed, perhaps forever. It serves as a timeless lesson. Even the grandest designs of man can be undone by the simplest, yet most powerful forces of the natural world. Perhaps the desert keeps its secrets best, a monument to a king's hubris and the untamed, indifferent power of the natural world. If you're captivated by the forgotten corners of military history, hit that subscribe button for more untold stories and brilliant strategies.